Hello and welcome to Altered Geek Unlimited, episode 86. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and joining me as usual is...
Michael Booth Ninja Powers.
Hello. Yes, we are back.
Yay! We're back.
A lot of pop culture things happening over the week.
Well, sure.
Some relevant, some not.
I think of the things we chose to talk about, I think there's three on here that might be relevant somewhat as being confirmed things, and then
Some things that might fizzle out.
and others that are just rumors. So, do we want to go in the order that we've
Yeah,
got
we can go
here?
in that order.
Since the hot button thing, anyways, was Leto's Joker pick that shot around the internet.
Like wildfire.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we saw the whole thing blew up and shot around the internet, and then Warner Brothers came out and said that the tattoos aren't a thing. It was a publicity stunt, which I don't know.
May or may not have been true.
Yeah, exactly. Because at this point, it's like they're
pandering to us that are whining.
Exactly, and it's something that's easy enough to remove. And I've had a number of conversations about this with some people. I'm coming out from the side of I'm okay with it. And you were coming at it from the side of
I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't think it was more so. I come at it from two different standpoints. I have this ability that, yes, I'm like Blanchard in some ways, that I'm closed-minded on it. Like, I don't like the change, but at the same time, like, I'm open-minded like you are. Like, I can understand the change. So, like, I'm kind of stuck on this, like, fence of wanting to hate it, but wanting to like it at the same time. But really not knowing why I want one or the other. Like, I mean, I don't have a problem with the rest of how he looks, because he looks like a freaky madman. He really does. But I want to hate it because of his, well, the whole tattoo thing that just doesn't jive with me all that well. But at the same time, like they said, it's the 75th anniversary promotion thing. I think what threw me more than the tattoos on his chest, because that didn't really bother me all that much, it was the damaged on his head, and then the J, and like some of the random tattoos on his face, and then the chromed out teeth.
See, the only tattoo I noticed on his face was the one on the forehead, which was the damaged moniker. And
he
yes,
had a J on the other cheek, and then he had like a line on his other cheek.
Well, see, but it's the damaged one that, and I say this because that's the only one that I remember seeing. The damaged one, or any. Okay, I'll just say this: any tattoos on his face are the ones that I personally would have a problem with.
Yeah, that's more so what I would have a problem with. The chest stuff, I was okay. Like, I was like you. I didn't really care as much on the chest. It was the face thing that threw me.
Because like when you sit back and you think about it, we all know that he's going to be in a suit of some kind.
It's either going to be an orange jumpsuit, or it's going to be his purple jumpsuit.
Or it could be a straitjacket.
Or that.
I'm just saying we're probably not
it.
we're probably not going to see him topless or shirtless, but we might. Don't know. Just saying. Joker typically has not been shown shirtless. So the only thing that, when he's in costume, the only thing that would give away that he has tattoos of any kind are the ones that would be on his face. So when I saw that, I was kind of like, whatever. But it was the one that was on the forehead that, got me. And then I'm trying to find a picture of it while we're talking about it so I can see those other tattoos. But whatever. A couple of interesting things about the tattoos that were brought up was the smile on his arm. If he was to, grab a hostage and put his arm around their mouth, like around their neck, covering their mouth, it would look like they had a big Joker smile on their face.
That's funny.
Which again, kind of interesting. The other way that I took it was that um this isn't like this is a Joker. I would think this is like a Joker interpretation past the Joker that we got from Heath Ledger. And
Well, I
what I mean by that is time wise. Like so Jack Nicholson's film version of the Joker was an origin tale, right?
yeah,
And Ledger's was I've been around for a while, and I feel like Leto's Joker is I've been around for a very long time.
which is fitting with the Batman that's been around for a very long time.
And I would imagine that he's been locked up several times. Um, and maybe not always in, Arkham or, and so I would imagine somebody as crazy as he is may take it upon himself in his boredom to do something like this to himself. Um, I do think the Joker is like intelligent and whatnot, but I feel like he's more and he's very capable of forming a plan. But I don't think he so much does plans as in like we think about them, which is like, sit down and figure out how to do something. I think he just figures out I want to rob a bank and then he's just going to go do it and he's going to roll with whatever happens. Um but I don't know, and I feel like that's like the kind of just from this one photo. I don't know. It didn't really offend me because if I and keep in mind I like Nicholson's Joker ish. I like Ledger's Joker a lot, and I like Mark Hamill as the Joker. Um, but if I wanted their interpretations of Joker, I would watch them. Um, it's just it's kind of the same thing, with except it happened for some reason it happened a lot faster with this image of the Joker than it did when we heard Ben Affleck was going to play Batman.
Yeah, there was a lot of people saying, "Oh, the shitty Daredevil is going to be Batman," and which was going around too. But to begin with, kind of like how we jumped into that, we were like, "Oh, that's going to be bad," and then we're like, "Okay, what could be good about this though?"
Right.
So I mean, we eventually came to accept it, which I think I'm at that stage now. I think the initial shock has worn off. Because I was hating on it something terrible when I saw it. I was like, "Oh, we got a crackhead, yay!"
Which to me, that's kind of what the Joker is
Well,
inside of
true,
his mind.
but I just didn't like the chrome teeth thing and the tattoos on his face. But other than that, I thought he looked fine. He looks freaky as hell, um, more so than any of the previous ones. I saw an image floating around earlier in the week, and I grabbed it. They have all four Jokers live action. They have Cesar Romero, and it says "classy" underneath him. They have Jack Nicholson's, and it says "gangster." They have Heath Ledger's, it says "anarchist," and then they have Leto's, and it says "psycho."
It's fine with me.
And I was like, that's oddly fitting for all the different interpretations. Um, because there's, I mean, he's Joker's a genius, but he's mad, like just nuts. So I mean, he's basically like the polar opposite of Batman, which is why they're so tied together.
And I think you'll get that. I think the interpret like to me there's two sides of I don't want to say two sides because I think like okay, think about this like okay, I'll look at this the way that I look at girls, for example, okay? Like I could be like, "Hey, you've got a really pretty face. I'm gonna talk to you." And then when they start talking and they come across as moronic, I'm gonna turn around and walk away. Like, and so you look at this, right? You see the Joker thing, and it's kind of like, whoa, that's kind of off-putting. But we don't know how he sounds. We don't know how he carries himself, how he moves, how we don't know it. There's a whole. We don't have his personality. We have a photo. We have no personality. So like. For me, if I take that photo and I take what I know about the Joker, I see no reason what I know about the Joker can't be applied to that look. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah,
So I mean, I guess we have to wait until we get that. I mean, Dark Knight did it the best, which was when they had that teaser trailer, which was just the Batman logo, and it was Alfred and the Joker laugh, was like the best thing ever. I don't know if we'll get that with this, but I just gotta wait and see how he acts, like how he acts, because right now we just have a photo, and I can see a photo of a pretty girl and be like, yeah, she's attractive, and then I
She
could
opens her
actually
mouth.
I can actually hear her talk and be like, oh, you're a freaking idiot. So
The other thing floating around was everybody pissing and moaning about Batman's voice on the trailer, which we kind of chalked up to it's his armor.
I really think that's his armor amplifying something, and I didn't have any more or less. It was easier to figure out what he was saying than Bale's Batman, but I was one of the few people that never had a problem understanding what Bale was saying.
I understood Bale. It was Bane that I had a hard time understanding. Every time he opened his mouth, I was like, "What the hell did he just say?"
Well, but for me, Bale's Batman with the voice didn't really fall apart until he was like talking in that voice.
Yeah,
Like when he was interrogating somebody or doing like the quick, like, swear to me, like that, those lines work in that voice, but him having like complete lines of sentimental dialogue in that voice, that's when that
that.
voice breaks down.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I don't like it so much.
So,
When he's in the heat of the moment, it works, but when he's not, it just blows.
yep. So,
Um,
anyways, we're past that.
but but yeah, the Batman voice and the thing, I kind of was I was watching the Dark Knight Returns animated thing, and then I was kind of piecing together some of the scenes of when Batman's fighting Superman, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, that kind of I didn't think about that before, but it makes sense um, about that. So anyhow, speaking of the Batman versus Superman, they showed the actual bat suit with full color,
We called it.
and we called it. It was the exact damn suit we called in the beginning of this podcast.
I really want to go back and listen to that episode, but
I think it was like episode 6 or something like that. I don't know.
it could have been anyone, like the first like month and a half. I think we talked about it several times.
Yeah, it was pretty common in the early episodes.
Well, that's
And they
because
actually released a shot of the new concept art of his armored suit.
I haven't seen that. I've uh, being completely honest, just for the listeners here, if I sound aloof in this episode, it's because I've had my head stuck in the sand. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Um, Joss Whedon was saying Coulson's basically still dead, in
I
his
don't.
opinion.
Okay, I don't. Joss is not the Lord of the Marvel universe or the
Even though
Marvel
he wanted to
Cinematic
be.
Universe, and that goes to Kevin Feige or Feige. I can never remember.
Feige.
Yeah, okay. I that goes to Kevin Feige, and what he says is the final straw. And if Agents of Shield is tied in and Daredevil is tied in, then everything's tied together. Until Kevin Feige comes out and says Agents of Shield is not a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, yes, Coulson is dead. But guess what? Avengers: Age of Ultron makes zero sense. At least the opening makes zero sense without Agents of Shield.
I'm gonna let this fly right now. I did download the movie to try and uh, for one, I wanted to see what the first 15 minutes was gonna be like. Um,
Shame on
and it
you.
was basically all the trailers. I
Yeah,
didn't watch the rest of it, but it
yeah,
was basically all the trailers. It was in that first 15 minutes.
that is
Um,
true.
but the damn movie, like, it starts out at a point that it's all action, so it doesn't make any sense without Agents of Shield this week.
I mean,
It does, but it makes more sense if
right.
you
There's
watch
that.
it.
There's a softer like lead in. Like I wasn't because one of the things I've said about um Phase Two is that there's nothing leading. There are no nuggets leading to Age of Ultron, and that's still true. There were zero. Everything in Age of Ultron is pretty much, for the most part, just comes out of Phase One. Like it. Yeah, Iron Man 3 happened in Thor and Cap, but they make very few remarks to those movies, and it's never to the larger events of those movies. It's to smaller things that people that have seen them will get. But I think they do that so that you don't have to see them. Like if you only want to see the Avengers movies, then you're not lost going, what are they talking about? Um, but it just doesn't. This is not Avengers like Avengers was to Phase One. This is definitely not that. And I had kind of prepared myself for that because, like I said, there was nothing leading into it. But the most recent episode of Agents of Shield does the most to set up Age of Ultron than any movie in Phase Two ever did.
Basically, yes.
Now, that's not to say that movies can't open this way. I mean, James Bond typically opens this way, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars, like Episode Four, for the most part, opens up this way, kinda. Um, Albeit a little slower because it was 1977.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, help me out here. There are a bunch of movies that do this.
Um. Hmm.
I'm drawing a blank. Star Trek did this.
The new ones.
And yeah, Into Darkness did this. They dropped you right in the middle of like some action scene, right at the beginning, which is fine because
Well, they did it even in the first reboot. You were on the ship, and then all of a sudden it's getting fired on.
mm, true. So yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not been done before in other movies. I mean, it works, but for me, for my money, um, uh, yeah, the episode of Shield actually helped the opening of the movie, if you will. It's like kind of like reading. It was kind of like reading like a prequel comic, you know, something like that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, since we're kind of talking about Agents of Shield here a little bit, it that last 10 minutes kind of more than makes up for the entire season so far. Um, because they had to. It's so weird, right? They had to fill how many episodes are they up to? Like 18? Like they're almost done, right? Trying to find my episodes. I have them on my computer. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I think they go to like 22 episodes. I think.
and see, this happened with season one. Season one, you had to wait through like 16 to 18 episodes before it got good, and then it got good on the back of
Cap
um,
Cap 2.
yeah. So again, 18 episodes. You had to get through 18 episodes here. So I'm wondering though if this is what's really going to be the test here is how next week's episode carries on.
Well, I guess they're hunting the Inhumans in the next episode, so
Oh, so we're just going back to okay, whatever.
they're going to be hunting down that pattern or that group of them that Sky visited
Oh yeah.
briefly.
Okay.
Which I think was in the teaser, but they're also going to kind of mention the Ultron robots.
Oh,
Um,
good. That's good.
but yeah, I like how the one Hydra villain it actually like crosses over into the film.
Yeah,
Kind of. I mean, it's a minute part,
I'll
but
say this
still.
about Age of Ultron. It moves really fast. Really fast.
Yeah, I noticed that when I watched the first 15 minutes, and I was like, I can't really watch anymore.
It doesn't stop.
I didn't. Well, I mean, it was just hit for hit, and I was like, okay, I need to stop this.
But
Like,
but I'm saying the entire movie is like that. It just does not stop. I was like, holy cow. Cram so much into 2.5 hours. So much. So
what do you
um,
think of the dual shield agencies?
I don't get it. I wish they would come out and say if it was like sword or hammer. I don't. Again, I don't know. I have to see how it plays out. I don't know what.
I think basically because Gonzalez was trying to act like his was the real shield.
Because he didn't know Fury was still alive.
Yeah, and I loved Coulson's quips in this episode, though.
Oh, it was
And
Coulson. He was back.
oh, I know.
When Coulson is Coulson, those episodes are great. Like there's a couple episodes in season one where Coulson is being himself because he's got the vintage
Car.
shield, the vintage car, the vintage shield equipment from Trip's grandfather.
Yeah.
Like and he's geeking out about it. Like that is the Coulson that I like. And going through and doing my Marvel rewatch, like Coulson is such a good window for people. Like I
He's like a dry smartass too, but it
yeah,
works.
and I still hate Joss Whedon for killing him. Like
I do too. He was one of the best, most interesting characters that you know, wasn't one of the Avengers.
you know, we can talk. I don't. I feel like if I talk any more about Shield or Age of Ultron, I might end up spoiling stuff. And I've been trying to keep very tight-lipped on both my opinion of Age of Ultron, which I'll just say up front, I hate the name. I hate the title Age of Ultron, and I can say that now, especially after seeing the movie. That name makes zero sense.
Okay,
Zero.
I look forward to seeing that tomorrow.
So, I, I'm not trying. I'm not saying if I like the movie. I'm not saying if I hated the movie.
You just don't like the title.
I just don't. I will say definitively, I don't like the title. But if I don't know if you recall, I've been every like once a week or so, I've been saying something about not liking the Age of Ultron title.
Yeah,
Um, and that was me having not seen the movie, and now I've seen it, and I hate the title.
it seems like they like slapping Age of on everything.
Well, there's a. I mean, Age of Ultron in the comic makes sense. Age of Ultron in this movie does not. Um, so it'll be, but yeah, I feel like I've just been trying to keep my mouth shut about what happens in the movie, and my personal opinions of the movie because I don't want to taint anyone's view of the movie. I don't want them going in looking for something that I might say or anything like that. I've actually kind of decided to take a more like non-instigatory stance on most things. Like, kind of not try to. I was trying to think of what the word for this earlier. Like, evangelize things
Hmm.
or hype things up for people. I'm trying to keep like my opinion. I mean, and yes, certainly everyone else is entitled to theirs. But if I've seen something before somebody else, I don't really feel like sharing my opinion until said person has too, because I don't want to influence anybody. So
The other thing I'll say further on this, like not actually saying anything about Agents of Shield or not Age of Ultron, I'll say, well, that should have been called like Ultron Unbound or something. But
yeah, no, it Ultron in the title makes sense, but yeah, I don't want to say any more on the
but
on the
Agents
title.
of Shield, anyhow, I liked the Coulson bit where he's rubbing it in Gonzalez's face, like, here you can play with the cube. Just don't be surprised when Fury wants it back. Oh, you didn't know Fury's still alive.
And then he takes the call from Hill.
And then he shows it and he says, I got to take this. And then shows it.
Yep.
And then his quip about, oh, and he just let you do that? Well, I didn't want to put it up for a vote.
Right. No,
So
it was a good episode.
it was classic Coulson, which was great.
I'm glad I watched it before seeing Age of Ultron again. Um, so
Moving on,
hmm
before we get gushing on anything.
Oh, can we transition right into spoiled movies?
Yes.
This is I just want to give an example here real quick because I there was a do I know you don't really mind spoilers too much.
It doesn't bother me unless it's like something like profound that basically like what we were talking about off air, that kind of thing bothers me.
Okay, so then
Or
I'm sad then I regret saying anything.
well, no, I would have found it anyhow.
Right. So
No, no, like there was stuff that happens like when I'm watching a TV show like Arrow or Flash or something, and then I see Blanchard post something about it,
okay.
and
Well,
then it gives it away, and I'm like, you son of a bitch.
right.
But
There was the reason I wanted to talk about this was because we're getting into these. I mean, I don't want to say we're getting into them. We're almost a decade into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've had 11 movies so far that are all intertwined, connected in some way, shape, or form. Um, and it's getting harder and harder for like the next movie down the line to not be spoiled in some way. Um, I don't know if I want to share this because if people haven't found it, they don't know they might not know about it. So I'm just
Should
gonna
we put
say
a spoiler alert?
well, there is an article on the
Or
internet
yeah.
conducted with Chris Evans, and they're talking about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it spoiled. I had not seen Age of Ultron yet, so it spoiled Age of Ultron to a certain degree, but it also spoiled in a much larger capacity Civil War for me. Um,
Which is just sad because it's not even till next year.
and that's all I'm really going to say about that. But I have another example of this, and I believe I've brought this up before, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record. But the same thing happened with Avengers. With the end of Avengers, where Tony goes through the wormhole and he falls back and he's unconscious, and there's that moment where the audience might think he's dead. That scene didn't land for me at all because earlier in the week, Marvel had already announced a May 3rd release date for Iron Man 3, which meant Tony's not gonna die. Um,
You think they'd keep a little bit more tight-lipped on it?
at least until the movie comes out, like the
Yeah, I
first,
mean,
let it go through the first week when you know that everyone on Earth has seen your movie. Then, sure, then announce Iron Man 3 or something. But no, they announced Iron Man 3 before Avengers had come out, and any geek like us or our listeners that reads news sites is going to see Iron Man 3 in the headline and know that nothing can happen to Iron Man in Avengers. I mean, that's how you know Iron Man is at least safe in Avengers. And if you want to know who's safe in Age of Ultron, read the cast list for Civil War. Um, so I'm just curious, like, is this? I mean, do you guys, Steve and to the listeners for conversations, like, do you guys foresee this being like a problem down the road? Does it hurt your excitement to see future movies if you already have like an idea of who may or may not live, and like knowing that any kind of peril you might see has already been a character might end up in, it may or may not have already been spoiled for you? Does it?
I'm kind of under the I like, well, at the same time I like spoilers to some degree of some kinds, but I don't like them to that degree because it kind of uh, I like not knowing what's going to happen to the key heroes, even though because like we're in a day and age where you could be watching anything and the lead character could just die. I mean, there's nobody's safe in films anymore
Well, wait a minute.
or in TV.
I think okay. I will say that about I will agree with you with TV about that, but I will not agree with you on film about that because we
Yeah,
did
they take cop outs like Into Darkness.
well we had a big conversation about that because Into Darkness brought up a big conversation with us because there was the whole
Being afraid to kill the leader.
yes, and and I think Iron Man was brought up again with that. We brought up Avengers, and they're not willing to go there because they can't because he's a cash cow. The same reason they didn't kill Chris Pine and in Into Darkness and just make the third movie The Search for Kirk. um, and there were other movies. I think why do I feel like we were talking about like G.I. Joe was referenced in there, I think, and Transformers 2 even? Like not Transformers 2 the movie, but Transformers as well, I think for some reason was referenced in there and not there was just a series of or there was a rash of movies where they were killing characters and bringing them back in the same movie. Which, it back in the day, I mean, using Star Trek 2 as the benchmark here, right? They killed Spock. Like for all intents and purposes, Spock was dead at the end of Star Trek 2.
Yep.
And then they made an entire sequel about bringing him back to life. And we haven't seen that like and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we haven't seen that in modern cinema.
No.
So it's kind of a bummer that they won't do that. I feel like, oh, that was the thing. X-Men Days of Future Past. I feel like it would have been a much better movie or a much better setup for X-Men Apocalypse if Xavier had died.
Because then it would kind of give reason to why everything's so screwed up.
Yes, it would actually give them a license to tell Age of Apocalypse instead of just X-Men Apocalypse. And you could end up with some Back to the Future stuff where they go back to that moment in Days of Future Past and save Xavier from dying. Like, and it would have put a pretty little bow on everything. I
Yeah, it's all right. They're gonna reboot it after Wolverine 2 anyway.
That's fine.
Everything.
That's fine. I mean, it's not like a I don't think it's a full on reboot. They're just not using the older actors anymore. That they're gonna
No, I think that they're gonna complete reboot.
well, they said they're continuing with the younger cast and they're still gonna use Fassbender.
Mm.
And they're gonna continue with the stuff that was set up with First Class. But as far as using like the older actors and stuff, they're because like some of like McKellen and stuff are showing up in Apocalypse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's still like I believe there is still a blend of the old guard and the new guard.
I know Wolverine's in that and Wolverine 2.
So I feel like after that, after Singer closes out that, then it's just going to be left to the First Class crew. Like it'll be a younger group of people. So in a way, yeah, it'll be a reboot because you'll end up with a younger Cyclops and a younger Jean Grey, but it's not like it you would if you were going to marathon them, you wouldn't just start with like the it's not like a reboot the way that like Amazing Spider-Man was a reboot.
Oh, yeah.
It's more like, okay, we've done two complete trilogies of X-Men movies. So let's start like another one. But let's set it up so that we can recycle characters.
Makes sense.
So I mean, at least that's how I see it. That's my personal view on the whole thing. So, anyways, we got off track. Spoiling movies.
Yes.
You don't mind them. I've actively been avoiding them, especially like trailers. I happened to read this little Chris Evans interview because the headline was about the production on a future Marvel movie being like one of the longest productions in history or in movie history. And so I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting. And then they had a little too much info in there. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have read that. So,
Yeah, that kind of stuff I don't like because then it kind of I think that's part of what bothers me about the modern superhero films is we're at a point now where nothing is hidden. I mean, they don't even try. They release every bit of information of their entire movie slate.
well, I don't have a problem.
And then I mean, that I don't have a problem with per se, but I have a problem with the fact that they've forecasted all these, and then you have actors saying, "Yeah, I'm tied to that."
That's what it is. It's not the titles, it's not them like pre-announcing movies or anything like that that I have a problem. It's when the actors get out front or get an interview and say, I'm tied to this particular movie, and this particular movie is set after that particular movie. Thanks. Like, I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. Like I still like I still enjoy Iron Man 3. And I liked Avengers. I mean, it didn't like I'm just saying like that one particular scene didn't land for me. Like elements of peril with those characters when I know they're in a future movie don't land as much as not knowing.
Well, yeah, because you're confused. You don't know what the hell's going on, and that's part of the fun of watching the movie.
Mm-hmm. and they take that away from you. But luckily, they fill the rest of the movie with so much awesomeness that you just kind of don't care. So
Yeah, I can see that. Should we move on to Spidey?
yeah, I mean that's the next logical leap here.
Since we're talking about films.
Just a nice big juicy rumor that I'm okay with. Do you want to butcher his name or do you want me to?
Asa Butterfield?
You think it's Asa?
Yeah.
Okay. Asa Butterfield is the top at the top of the list to be the new Spider-Man. I'm okay with this.
He has that awkward look.
Um,
Like he could be a Spider-Man.
I'm more okay with this casting announcement than I am with the rumored title.
What?
It's
I
like,
didn't see
oh
that.
yeah, Spider-Man, semicolon, the next Avenger.
Oh.
Like that's just, and supposedly that's a rumor and it's a working title, but that's like way on the nose. Like
That's like two there.
I'm not. I mean, if that ends up being the title, then fine, I'll see it. I just won't acknowledge it by the next
It's
Avenger.
official
Because
title.
does anyone really call Captain America the first Avenger, or do they just say, "Have you seen Captain America?"
America.
Yeah. So I mean, regardless of whatever they decide to subtitle it, that's fine. But
They should have just called it the Spectacular Spider-Man and just left it
or
that.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Or that. I would
So
have been fine with that.
I would have been fine with anything that isn't the next Avenger,
Or with a semicolon.
because the next Avenger was technically Iron Man. Hello. Jeez.
Yep, basically.
I'm just giving him a hard time. That way, and now the listeners will give me a hard time too.
They'd be like, "You bastard, you butchered that. Thanks." Speaking of reboots or restarts or whatever, and I'm only going to do this briefly anyway. Dragon Ball Z, thanks to the previous film and the new one that's coming out of Dragon Ball Z Resurrection of F, which is Frieza, and they're giving him a new form, and it's the original creator back doing all these new movies, and they look spectacular too. Um, and they gave like Goku and Vegeta new Super Saiyan God forms that are Super Saiyan on top of it. So it's like Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Goku, which is entirely too much to say. Um, they're coming out with a new series after 18 years of nothing, calling it Dragon Ball Super or something to that effect. But it's basically retconning and destroying the Dragon Ball GT series like it never happened.
Hmm.
Because it takes place after Dragon Ball Z, like years after the Majin Buu saga. But it's basically because Akira Toriyama, the guy that did Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball, doesn't acknowledge GT really because he didn't do that. He was
Okay.
kind of there as a consultant, but they didn't. That was kind of like somebody else's project.
Okay.
So like nobody really likes Dragon Ball GT. I liked only the aspect of the Super Saiyan 4, but that was it. The rest of the show I didn't much care for. Um, but I'm kind of hopeful for it. Plus, the more new stuff they come out with, the more they add to the video games. So that gives me something new to play that I'm not familiar with. Because if you've played any Dragon Ball game over the last 15 years, it's the same damn game over and over, pretty much.
No.
Because you're playing the same stories that have happened on the TV show. So if you watch the TV show, you're playing the same game over and over. Until Xenoverse, which they actually changed things up, which was kind of neat. I haven't played it yet, but they've added for DLC, which this I could see more legitimately than the other crap that they do DLC for, but they added the new forms of like Frieza and the Super Saiyan God stuff for Goku and Vegeta that they didn't have before this movie comes out in July. So
Okay.
So that I could see more legitimately than the typical DLC because this kind of happened after the fact. So, but yeah, that's all I was going to say in Dragon Ball.
All right. So I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit. And I'm not taking sides here on anything, but I've wanted to talk about smartwatches. Mostly I want to talk about them now because, like I said last week, I ordered an Apple Watch. My wife received hers. I'm still in limbo waiting for mine, um, which is why my head has been stuck in the sand all week. I haven't really been paying attention to anything. I've been watching UPS flights come from China to Alaska to Louisville, Kentucky, um, and reading forums of people that are also waiting while we all try to figure out the delivery process and how things work out between and like the timing between like when your credit card gets charged and when your watch actually ships. It's been fun. I mean, it's been fun, seeing what these guys have to say and trying to figure out the method to the madness that is moving such a large volume of product. So, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the whole idea of the smartwatch. Not like Android Wear or the Apple Watch or necessarily like the Pebble, but just like the whole idea of it because I love gadgets. I know Steve loves gadgets. I feel like the smartwatch is like the one of the first steps towards like a Star Trek communicator, if
Yeah.
you will.
Well, they had one like that in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah. And there's a whole like Dick Tracy, like the whole like making a phone call from your wrist. Like, I mean that's like childhood stuff. That's like the stuff that you send away like 5 box tops to get like something fake that does that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious. Like I know how I feel about them, and I can share that. I shared a little bit in the forum or on the last episode post. Where Justin Washington, I really wasn't going to talk about this until Mr. Washington commented, and he politely said, "Not trying to troll, but what is the point of the iWatch? I don't get it at all. Does our culture really need another screen to stare at? We look dumb enough staring at our phones. Now we are going to look at them even more. Now we are going to look even more ridiculous staring at our wrists." Um, So with that, I want to see like, just what you think of the whole idea in general, Steve, of like the the smartwatch movement, if you will.
I'm kind of torn, only because I uh, I wouldn't mind it per se because it would one stop me from pulling my phone out every 10 seconds to
Hmm.
see why it's beeping or vibrating or whatever.
Yep.
Um, because I could just look at my wrist that I would already have a watch on anyhow, and see if it's important. And then, like you mentioned before, it flashes away and goes back to a phone or back to a watch.
Yep.
Um, so I mean, I could see if it's relevant. If it's something that I absolutely need to get a hold of right that second, then I could determine whether I need to pick my phone up. And if it's not, I could just ignore it.
Hmm.
So I mean, in that essence, I think it would be really cool. Um, so that I'm not grabbing my phone every 5 seconds or having to like take it out of my pocket or whatever. I can just um, leave it alone.
Right.
Even though I'll still be looking at my wrist, but I could technically be looking at the time too.
Now, see, that is something interesting that the whole like checking your wrist to see if it's something important that you need to get at because there's a there's a cultural stigma here, and I'm not the one that pointed this out. I got this from an article that I read, one of the many articles that came out surrounding the Apple Watch, and it was really interesting because it's more or less culturally acceptable now for you to, for your phone to vibrate in your pocket and for you to reach into said pocket, pull your phone out, check it real quick to see if it's something that you need to deal with, and put the phone away, right? It's like 90% socially acceptable to do that, right? But if you're in a
But
social interaction with people and you keep checking your watch, I'm not talking about a smartwatch, but if you're in a social setting with people and you keep checking your watch,
it looks like you're bored.
exactly,
So that it would appear rude instead of just checking what to see what it was beeping for.
exactly. The stigma around checking your watch is boredom, or you would rather be someplace else than where you are versus pulling out your phone. So that's something that's just a little something that smartwatches have to overcome. And I think if and when they become more prevalent, because I don't even want to say if, when they become more prevalent, then yeah, it'll be people will know that you're not necessarily checking the time. You're checking that, do you need to pull your phone out? Um, Personally, along with the other reasons that I referenced in my post, which for anyone that hasn't read it, uh, I've used a smartwatch. I bought a Pebble about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, and I had it for about a week. And for anyone that doesn't know, Pebble was one of the first major Kickstarters, and they kind of pioneered the idea of the smartwatch. It was a little plastic thing with an e-ink screen on it, and it had basic interaction with your smartphone. It was both iOS and Android. Um, but since it wasn't made by either Google or Apple, it had very limited functionality with the phones. Like it would just pretty much just give you your notifications. And because it was an e-ink screen, it wasn't all that pretty to look at. And I returned it under the justification of I really like where this is going. I like what it does, but I want it to do more with my phone, and I want it to look nicer. Like I was wearing a piece. I'm an adult, and I'm wearing a piece of plastic on my wrist. So I returned it under the thing like, Apple will eventually enter this market, and I will purchase whatever they put out there. Um, that said, it's eventually happened. I like the whole idea of getting the notifications on your wrist. And one of the things I intend to do with it is I've set up a little counter in my kitchen now. I have a little counter that just kind of is off by itself, and I walk by it every time I come in the house. And when I come home from work, I take my wallet out, I put it on that counter, I put my keys on that counter, and I have a like cell phone charger built into the wall on that counter.
Okay.
And so my plan is when I come home from work to put my cell phone on that counter, my wallet and my keys. And I won't have to go back to my cell phone like again. Like I can interact with, I can be more present around my wife and what I'm doing, not constantly, while I'm sitting there watching TV with her, I'm not reaching over, grabbing my phone, trying to check stuff. Some of that stuff can be handled really easily from the watch now, right? And I can make and receive phone calls from the watch. Um, and I can respond either verbally or through dictation to text messages that I get. The interesting thing about the Apple Watch is that they didn't even attempt to put a keyboard on it. So that whole texting while driving with the iWatch is not possible. There is no keyboard. Um, so that's my goal because when you're out and about, the phone talks to the watch with Bluetooth. But when you're at home, it talks to the phone and the watch talk to each other over your Wi-Fi network.
Hmm.
So technically, you can leave your phone anywhere in the house and take a phone call as long as you're within Wi-Fi range. So but that's my whole plan. I think and like I said, my wife's had hers for about a week and she really likes it. I'm kind of surprised. I'm a real big fan of the whole quantified self movement, which is basically like the ability to track everything that you do, like at all times. Like a lot of it has to do with like fitness tracking and how active
Okay.
you are, like how many steps you do, like how physically like how much cardio do you get in a day, how many stairs do you climb, like the idea of tracking how physically active you are throughout the day or not active as the case may be with sometimes like that to me is like really interesting, and I've been like a big fan of that since my sister really got me into it in like 2011 with like the Fitbits.
Okay.
um and I've bought like a new Fitbit like every year. And one of the last Fitbits I bought had call notifications on it where it was like a very limited smartwatch. It was like a pedometer. You put it on your wrist and it could give you caller ID information. You couldn't answer your phone or anything like that, but you could see who was calling before you took your phone out of your pocket. Um, and that was really cool. But again, being able to do more with that information is exciting to me. And at least the Apple Watch and even the Android Wear stuff, that's about the size of a Star Trek communicator, like the badge.
I could live with that though. Like, I mean, I wouldn't mind having it on my watch, like, just for the sake of not having to pull the phone out all the time. But I do agree in a social situation, yeah, I don't think I'd want to use my watch as my phone,
I think that
like notification center.
see. I think that just needs to. I think that'll come with time. I mean, early on, it was considered rude to look at your phone, you know, all the time. Um, but I think it come and now. Again, not trying to evangelize like smartwatches or anything. They're not for everybody. I mean, I do recommend playing with one before you like completely pass judgment on the whole idea because sometimes the whole idea with Apple, sometimes I mean, I'm gonna say this because Steve Jobs said this: people don't know what they want until you've shown them what they want.
He's right. That's why he was
And
so rich.
so it's, I mean, you can sit back all day long and say you don't want something or something's not for you, but you know, at one point or another, I'm willing to bet at one point or another, everybody that has a smartphone has said they didn't need or want a smartphone.
Oh, I definitely agree with you.
And now I get into conversations with my wife about the internet being like a utility, kind of like water or electricity, and she thinks it's the dumbest idea ever. And I tell her,
It's true.
and I tell she goes, "It's not necessary for life." And I said, "Yeah, it is, but you take it for granted because we have internet everywhere in the house, and you have the internet on your phone everywhere you go. If you don't think the internet is a necessity in this day and age, if you don't think the internet access to the internet is a necessity, turn the cellular connection off on your phone or turn the data connection off on your phone and see how long you last." She won't do it. So
I know I won't last. I have that necessity.
I mean, I was right there with everybody. I when I first got a cell phone in, see, I got my first cell phone when I was 23,
Hmm.
going on 24. I know it was like 2004 when I got it. So I was 23, and it was a little Motorola V180 flip phone. I still have it. Great little cheap, zero down when you sign a 2-year contract thing, right? And I really like that thing, but as soon as the iPhone came out, like 2 years later, 3 years later, I jumped right on it. I never looked back, but I kept telling myself, I don't need all this. I just like all this stuff. I actually ended up drowning my first iPhone like 8 months after I had it. And I was without an iPhone for like 2 weeks, and I was going nuts because I had to go back to using my little Motorola V180 that didn't have the internet on it.
It is quite painful though when you go from one to the other.
And I don't know. I find I don't know how you feel. This kind of spun off into a conversation about the internet and its usefulness as a utility, but you know, I don't know how you feel. I find a computer to be absolutely useless without the internet on it.
I do anymore, but that's because we do all this kind of stuff. And I, when I lose internet here, I play like an old game that I have, like Command and Conquer Red Alert 2, and then I play around to that, and I'm like, okay, this is fun. And then I shut off my computer and I go play my Xbox.
See, like my iPad, I have the LTE Wi-Fi iPad because I don't see the point in a tablet that can't connect to the internet everywhere. Like, but that's again, that's me, and that's I depend on the internet for everything. Like I find computers to be absolutely useless without the internet in them, without a connection to the internet. Because the first thing I do when I sit down to a computer, I I mean, besides my music and like the TV shows that are like stored locally on it, like the most used app is a browser. So, but yeah, but you know, that took the long way around. People just, you know, I'm willing to bet everyone said I don't need or want a smartphone, and now almost everyone has one. I mean, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I'm sure over 50% of Americans have a smartphone
Yeah,
of
I
some
wouldn't
kind.
I wouldn't doubt that in the slightest. My
And
wife loves her phone.
I mean, and some of these, and some of that comes from pricing, because sometimes like a device can price itself out of the market, but that's why you have Android and you have iOS. So, you know, Android's trying to sell, like Pebble has like their smartwatch is like 75 to $100 to start. And then you've got Android, which comes in like from like 150 to 250, and then you've got Apple doing what they do and charging everybody or asking for a liver from everybody for their stuff.
Asking for a liver.
So it's, you know, it just comes down to, you know, do they make a smartwatch that you want or can afford, really? I mean, that's the only way you can. It's always the barrier to entry, really, that, you know, can more or less deters people from trying something, right? So
Yep.
when they become ubiquitous, or you can get, or you get like a, when you renew your contract, you get like a free Android Wear smartwatch. Yeah, I'd be amazed at how many people like don't jump at that offer. So I don't know. I kind of thought you would be,
Against it.
yeah. But then again, you are a geek guy and a gadget guy, so I guess I
I
can
mean,
see.
I'm not a huge fan of some of the things. Um, like I don't know if I would spend the money to buy one,
Yeah,
but
but
again, it would kind of depend on how much. Because like you figure you spend for a nice watch, you'd spend probably let's say $200-300.
I can get, yeah, my titanium ones are about that much.
So you could for the same price buy, the
A smartwatch.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I looked at it too. You know, but like I said, there's going to be that. There will be a time where you can get an Android watch for free when you renew like a cell phone contract for 2 years,
Kind of like you back in the day get like a Bluetooth piece.
or even now they give you like a free tablet when you sign a 2 year contract.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of places when you sign a contract, they'll give you some kind of Android tablet for
Huh.
renewing a cell phone plan for 2 years or something like that. I think you have to be like a new customer. I think it's
That
like
sucks.
a way to attract new people. I could be wrong. I've never looked into it because they're Android tablets that they're, excuse me, because they're Android tablets that they're offering. But, and before I get jumped on in the comments, I'm a diehard Apple fan. If people don't understand that by now, I'm sorry, but I have no interest in an Android tablet. Um, so yeah, I guess that's all I got.
Alrighty. Um, yeah, I think that's about it this week. Let's.
I just want to put a plug in here real quick.
Okay.
The new Off the Cuff has started. First episode was April 30th. Uh, if you guys want to, if you're fans of this show and you're ever fans of Off the Cuff, I highly suggest giving it a listen. I think you might be a fan of the direction. And it's one of the shorter podcasts on Geekcast Radio, so you can take it with you to the gym or on your short commute or for a walk around the block. So, yeah, give that a listen and let me know what you guys think.
Yeah, so go. I'm even on one of them.
Yes.
Not sure which one, but I'm on one.
The next one.
Okay. So yeah, do it. Do it now. So yeah, that's it this week on Altered Geek. Hope that you guys liked the discussion. And so thank you for listening to Altered Geek Unlimited. You can get a hold of us in the following ways. You can call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. You can email us feedback@geekcastradio.com. You can comment, as always, on the episode post. And get a hold of us on Twitter @AlteredGeek. My Twitter is @SCP21, and yours is?
@BoothNinja81.
So until next time, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks.
Bye.